An experience that I had was back in '05 with my brother and I were camping up in the Adirondacks, and
I,
we were up camping.
hang on 1 second. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another broadcast of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I am Rick Weaver. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Eric Vogel, a BFRO researcher from, Eric, you said Minnesota?
No, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts, I'm sorry, sir.
That's all right. It's all
Eric,
good.
Eric has got a few interesting pictures he's sent us. He's going to be with us tonight. Hope everybody enjoys watching the show. Mr. Blake has been having problems with his phone. He called me a little while ago and said he was going to try to get on with his laptop here in a minute. So I'm hoping to be able to get him in on the show. Eric, without any further ado, man, it's yours.
What's up?
I said, without any further ado, the show's yours, buddy.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm not just a BFRO investigator. I'm also part of the Squatch Massachusetts investigating team. Been doing it now I've been with them for 8 to 9 years, and I've been with the BFRO for about 5 or 6. I've been investigating with my brother for 30 plus years. So yeah, I can tell you the difference between a bear and a moose and a deer and all the rest. So I've had my own encounters. I've had one visual encounter, and that was back in 2016. What else would you like to hear?
Oh, hey, man, tell us about some of your encounters.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to my brother and I were out. We were outdoor guides, wilderness guides, back in 2005. We were guides for about 15 years. We did a lot of the Adirondacks and out in New Hampshire and Maine and whatnot. And we were actually taking a vacation, which we called a vacation. It was camping, and we were doing some fishing, and we went into this little cove, which brought us to a beaver dam, and we started catching fish right over on the other side of the beaver dam. As soon as we started catching fish, these two trees that were about, I'd say, anywhere between 8 and 10 inches in diameter, at least 10 feet apart from each other, where a human can't put your hands between them, and they were those things were shaking like they were just tornado trees caught in a tornado. They were just shaking back and forth, and the screaming and whatever the noise this thing was making, I've never heard before. It was a noise that, me being an outdoor guide, we just turned around and started paddling backwards out into the lake. It went on for a good 5 minutes. It did not want us there. But back in that time, we never put the two together until we started talking to a few people, and then we kind of re-looked at the situation that we had. And well, if you put everything together, I would say it was possibly a Bigfoot. So that's what started us looking and getting more involved into it. And then we had an expedition back in 2016, and we had 15 people, and we were out in this spot that we've investigated for a couple of years now. Had a lot of activity, and it was a dreary day. It was a misty day, and we kind of walked out into this spot I'd say about 3/4 of a mile. And one of the guys that falls behind, and he kind of watches everybody to see if anything is watching us. He had come up and said that he could hear whistles. A gentleman and his son were up in front of us, and he sent his son back, and he could hear knocking. So we had a GoPro going, and we kind of all just kind of spread apart, 15 people going in 15 different directions. And I believe what we did was they were talking to each other, and we caught the one that was in the middle. Yeah, it was about 40 yards away, and it had to. I was teeter-tottering with it. I kind of crouched down because I'm a hunter, so I figured if I crouched down, I could see maybe legs or something. And I just noticed this big black thing that was out of the ordinary. And when I stood up and I turned, it turned with me. So I kind of leaned to the left, and when I leaned, it leaned. When I stood back, when I stood straight up, it stood straight up, and I went, "Oh man, I can't believe this." So I believe it or not, I started going towards it, and this gentleman that was with us was 30 yards away from me to my right at a different angle. He could see from the waist down, and I could see from the waist up. And we entered this GoPro frame at the exact same time from two different angles. And we both went at the same creature at the same time. And that's where those prints come in. Those prints were about 18 and a half, 19 inches long, 9.5 inches wide, with a heel print.
Go ahead with your story. I got to let somebody in here.
Sure. Yeah, so the heel was about 4 inches deep. We found that the very next day when we were driving in. We called the gentleman that's with our group. He's the one that created the Squatch team, and we turned around and we called him. He came down. He brought the casting material, and when we got down there on the way in, we got screamed at from up on the hill. I was sitting in the front passenger side. My brother was behind me, behind the passenger side. The two of us had our windows down, and we could hear the yell or the scream. And the John that was driving, he couldn't hear it, but he trusts us enough to know that we weren't telling him, we weren't lying to him. So we drove in there, and there was the print right there. It was beautiful. Unfortunately, the cast doesn't show it as well as it did the very first, the picture did. But it's there, and I know what I saw. I know what we saw. Out of 15 of us, 2 of us saw it. The day before I saw that Bigfoot, I saw an orb, but that's a whole nother story. But that's how I saw it.
Well, now, let me ask you. You brought up the subject of orbs.
Yep.
What do you think the correlation between the orbs and Bigfoot? What's your feelings on that?
Well, I started out believing that there wasn't anything there, but 2 different times that I have had encounters with Bigfoot, I've seen orbs. We were on a second expedition, and we saw through a FLIR this red thing going back and forth. It was walking a log, and right after we had seen it, once it vanished, another orb popped out. So I don't know. There's a lot of question and speculation about that. So everybody has their own way of looking at things. I don't know if there is a correlation or not, but from the 2 times that I've seen a Bigfoot or had an encounter, I've had an encounter with an orb. So for me, there could be a correlation there. For somebody else, there might not be.
Well, now myself and my team, we've been doing this. I've been doing it myself off and on for the last 40 years. As far as investigations since my first sighting back in '81, and my team that I've put together, we've had encounters. Started out at a place about 20 miles southwest of here, down at Altoona Lake. And when we first started having encounters down there, we had rocks thrown at us. We had whoops, we had yells, we've had bluff charges down there. We've actually been in areas down there where we could smell these things. But we've had orbs. We've had what they call the Sierra Sounds. We've actually heard
Yep.
these things
Yep.
doing their uh, conversations between one another. And you know, I've encountered some wild stuff, you know, while investigating these things. I mean, some real wild stuff. And
Yep.
I don't know. I've heard people uh, describe mind speak with these creatures. What's your feeling on that?
I've never had it happen, so I couldn't answer that question. I know I've heard people talk about it, but I don't know much about that. But you know, nothing is too far out of the realm. You know, I mean, whoever thought that we would be doing what we're doing now and looking for an elusive creature? And many of us have encounters.
That's correct. You know, I've had over the years, we've investigated sites where everything from where people's had animals come up missing, where they've had their livestock come up missing. Had one guy that claimed that he shot at one night with a shotgun. It was there one moment and it was gone the next. And he said he never heard it run, never heard it
Yep.
scream. Uh, it just basically vanished on him. One guy out of Texas that I've interviewed on here says that he had one night that he had a group of hogs. He was out there hunting flatlands there in Texas. And he said that he had a bunch of hogs come in on him, and he said all of a sudden he got this feeling that something was speaking to him and told him to leave the area, leave it now. And he said that he got back on the four-wheeler that he, or the side by side that he was on, and
Yeah.
got back up on a small ridge above where he was hunting at, or where he was doing investigations at that night, and run into another guy, and the guy had told him that they had saw like 40 or 50 hogs in that area where he was at down there. So, you know, he told me, he said, I don't know whether it was something trying to warn me about the hogs or what it was. But, you know, there's a lot of wild stuff that we've encountered while doing these investigations.
Oh yeah, correct. Many times we've run into all kinds of things. Like you said, I've had rocks thrown. My brother and I have had rocks thrown at us. We've had the high pitched whistles. We were in during our outdoor business. We took this church group camping for the weekend. We went for a hike. They went up onto the mountain by themselves, them and their pastor, and then they about 40 minutes later they come down. Now they're on the top of the mountain. We're on the bottom. We're boiling up some water so they can have some cocoa and some coffee and whatnot. They come on down and we're getting ready to pour it, and the pastor's standing beside me, and all of a sudden you hear this high-pitched whistle. It was like they flipped the switch, it went off, and they flipped the switch and it was gone, on and off. And he just looked at me, and he knows that there was nothing up there because they just came from up there. It's nothing but woods. And he goes, "What was that?" I looked at my brother and I looked at my brother and I said, "Yep, it's there." The very next day when we were done, we'd do a high ropes course with them. The very next day we were packing up, we were getting ready to leave, and we could hear something walk through the grass down in front of us about 20 yards. It was just over the incline. And when I walked over there, I didn't see anything. So we turned around and we were still packing up. All of a sudden I heard something coming through the trees. There was a rock about the size of a candle pin ball that come through the trees had to be at least 60 yards away, because the only thing that was there was a maple tree laying down. And my brother looked at me and I looked at him and I says, "Yep." I said, "It's time to go." I said, and nothing I know that can throw a rock. No animal that I know. They don't have thumbs. So I don't know what happened there, but we packed up and we kind of left that area for a while because that's where we were doing all of our schoolwork, the high roads courses. We went back the following week and we went out and checked it out. We went up on top of the hill. We were scoping that out, trying to figure out where the whistle came from. We couldn't find anything, but they'll never forget it. He didn't believe us when we were telling him about Bigfoot, but I think he does now.
Like we've had the same thing happen. I've had people go out with us, that were complete skeptics that would tell me there's no way in hell that something like this could ever exist.
Yeah.
How can something like this sustain itself in especially the area we've got around here? Well, we've got mountainous areas. North Georgia is very mountainous. Streams, lakes, plentiful, rivers. And these
Absolutely.
creatures, man, these creatures I found are basically, I don't want to use the word scavenger, but these things are the best, man, that I have ever seen of living off the land. That's what these creatures do without having to have any modern conveniences whatsoever. These creatures have maintained themselves for hundreds of years. My grandfather was full-blooded Cherokee Indian from the reservation in North Carolina. Granddad had told me about these creatures back when I was young. They called them Watchers of the Woods, is what they call them, or Watchers of the Mountains. Yeah.
Yep.
But he wholeheartedly believed in these animals or these creatures. Myself, I like to refer to them as woods people because basically, these, to my opinion, are a type of person that does live in the wilderness. They live off the wilderness. They survive off the wild, and it's just amazing to me what these creatures can do.
Yes, but you got to remember, it is a creature. It is an animal.
Right.
And like any other animal, they'll survive. They'll do what they need to do. Whether bear, moose, mountain lion, they're all big animals and they all eat a lot. So, I don't know. I don't know. People think that there's a lot. I don't know how many there are. I don't know if there's they say that they live in families and these I don't know, I call them a commune, but it's not a commune. It's just it would be like a huge couple of families living together, but you would think that you would see more tracks. You would think that you would, more feces. The odor, the smell. So I'm not sure how that comes into play on how many there are. I'm sure certain areas might have more than others, depending on sustainability.
Well, I wish Blake was with us tonight. Blake actually had a sighting of 3 of the creatures down at Altoona back in 2011. He actually saw a huge male, a female, and a young juvenile that was with him. He said and of course, we don't know how these creatures, what their lifespan. We don't know what their lifespan is. We don't know, in correlation to us how the creatures age or whatever. But he said that he thought this juvenile was maybe 2 to 3 years old is what he thought. But he got a sighting of about 150 yards from him. And this area we've run up on them in Blue Ridge WMA, which is about 50 miles from where we live here. We run up on them over there where we actually saw a pair of 2 of them one night. Couldn't tell whether they were male or female, but now those two were running together. So whether they're actually uh, pack animals like wolves,
Yeah.
or they actually live in groups, I don't know. That's something
Right.
that we really
That's
can't we really can't say.
right.
But
That's why we do what we do.
that's
That's why
exactly it.
that's why we investigate. Because eventually we're going to find some of the answers. Do they live like that? Do they, stick structures? People put a lot of things into stick structures. I'm an outdoors person. You know, uh, the stick structures that I have seen, they wouldn't keep an animal dry. You know, uh, so is there another meaning for them, or do they even make them? I mean, who knows? Unless someone's actually seen them while they're making it.
Right, right. I
That's why.
wholeheartedly agree with you. This area here, over at Lafayette, Georgia, a place that we on Pigeon Mountain over there that we investigate. We found an area over there a few years back that you go into this area on top of the mountain, and as you come off the main body of the trail up into the woods, there's a big X. Okay,
Yep.
we walked this area out for about a 6 mile square radius, and in that 6 mile radius, we actually found cat get down here. We actually found four of these big X structures. Now,
Yep.
whether this means a lot of people that's in my group, they kindly feel that it maybe these animals are marking hunting territories, or just they're basically their territory that they use,
Right.
whatever, with these structures.
I've
But
heard. I've heard
you
that
know,
too.
as we say, we don't know.
Right. You don't know. I mean, did Mother Nature just happen to high winds and knock them down, and they just happen to fall like that, or how long have they been there? And I've gone. We've been driving. My brother and I have been checking out this area now for 6 years, specifically for that same reason. They had a microburst go through there. So we went in and we took videos just prior to that happening, and then we went in and took video after. We were just up there investigating the same area for that picture that I posted, and you wouldn't even think that some of the trees that were uprooted, you somebody else would have taken, somebody that's not from the area probably would have turned around and says, "Oh my God, look at this. How did that get upside down like that? Or how did that get up in the tree at 9 feet or 10 feet?" You'd be surprised what Mother Nature can do. So we've
Well,
seen the difference between a couple of years in that one area.
right. Well, I'll tell you something we found over on the Blue Ridge back years ago. It's been probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago as we was investigating over there. We actually saw where something had taken a tree this big around, maybe a little bigger, had actually uprooted this tree, turned it upside down, shoved it back down in the ground with
Mm-hmm.
a root ball exposed about 4 foot off the ground. So, and we found a lot of stick structures in that area while we're doing an investigation there. So, as you say, whether Mother Nature did it, whether Sasquatch did it, whatever. But
The other thing I always say is, if I can be there, why can't somebody else be there? You know what I'm saying?
you're right there too.
Scouting groups, they do a lot of that shelter building. That's one of their merit badges with wilderness survival. They go out and build shelters, and they have to sleep in them. What's to say that if I'm in an area, maybe that was the reason why they're there. I don't know. That's that's part of the investigating part. That's what makes it worthwhile.
Hey, that's it, man. That's it. I try to
We
look at
have a good time.
everything. I try to look at everything with a reasoning mind.
Yep.
And I'm like you. I try to debunk everything that I find. I try to find a solution for it. A lot of times you can't find a solution for it, though.
That is true. You know, I still try to find a solution for what I saw that day. You know, because I didn't get it was an image. It was 40 yards away. I brought my rangefinder with me the next day. It was 40 yards away. So, I mean, there was nothing in my way but one tree. It had some leaves on it. It was April. Yeah, it was April. And it was about 9 feet tall, 8.5, 9 feet tall. It was about as wide as a sheet of plywood, about 4 feet. I know what I saw. I've got a footprint. You know, I got a track. You put the two together, and I got yelled at the next day. So I put that all together. It could only come out to one thing. That's all. You know, that's the way I'm looking at it. Somebody else might look at it and say, well, you know, it could be this, it could be that. Well, that's true. It could be. But I know what I saw. And I'm an outdoorsman, and I know what a bear looks like.
Well, you know,
so.
I myself have hunted these mountains around here, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, since I was 7 years old. I've learned, my dad was a big outdoors enthusiast, my brothers, uh, my uncles. You know, I was taught from the best that I consider being the best at tracking, hunting. I've taken deer myself. I've taken bear. I've saw wild hogs. I've saw, you know, I run taxidermy shop myself for 20 years. Done it professionally. And, you know, I saw basically about everything that at one time or another that I thought could walk, fly, or crawl in these mountains around here. But when I had that sighting back in '81 of the Sasquatch there on Talking Rock Creek, and like I said, I saw this thing at about 40 yards, which we were in a raft. But when this thing stood uh, and its hands come up out of the water, man, that was one of the most exhilarating things that ever happened to me.
I bet.
You know, I went from being a believer in Sasquatch to being a knower.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
That's what really gave me the drive uh, and the ability to get out here and do what I do on a daily basis as far as checking these things out. I have people that write me, send in emails, call me all the time about things that's going on around their houses in the mountains around here, and we'll assemble our team and go check it out.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's what we do.
absolutely. Absolutely. There's not a time that we don't get that Squatchachusetts that doesn't get a call. John gets a call. He'll make one phone call and he'll have 4 or 5 investigators there, and we'll be out right after it. So it's not like it can get very far, you know.
Right.
And we've done that quite often.
Well, now you're BFRO investigating. How many investigations have you actually been on with a BFRO?
We've done up here in Massachusetts. We've done 3 or 4 expeditions.
Right.
We've done investigations. Well, we do them all the time. We take care of the whole Northeast, all the way, you know, Mass, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. I mean, Vermont, New Hampshire. We have people in each one of those states. So, I mean, we're always doing them. We're constantly. And sometimes, you know, you got to feel people out. Sometimes they got bored during the pandemic, you know, and maybe somebody threw something out there, and just to see if they get a phone call to see how real it is. We've had that happen. I personally have done 12 so far. And I know there's a few other guys out there that have done more than me, just in our area.
Right. And what's been the outcome of those investigations that you've done?
Well, the ones I've done will be published or are published. Most of them a couple of them are Class A, and most of them are Bs, Class B, where it's they heard yelling or you hear a knocking. Screams, whatever. Some of the other ones are, you know, they heard it from this person. This person is telling them the story, so it's hearsay. You have to go through it, you know, just like we investigate our, you know, when we go out, you know, when we talk to people, we ask them certain questions. Same thing. And
Right.
all of that information gets stored, and Matt Moneymaker takes care of that. He takes care of all that information and
Okay.
compiles it.
I had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you know the gentleman or not, Mr. Carter Bichette. Uh, Carter, Carter, I've had him on the show a couple of times. I really enjoy having Carter on, but Carter has some type of conflict going on with Matt right now, as far as Carter saying that Matt will actually take the reports and cut a lot of stuff out of them. Have you had anything on any of
Uh,
your reports that you?
no. When I write up a report, it stays just the way it's been written. Nothing gets changed. I haven't had that problem.
Oh, okay.
You know, I can't say that, you know, I can't answer that question, so I couldn't tell you. I know it hasn't happened to me.
Right. What is your most memorable event that's happened to you while doing this?
Well, besides seeing it, I would say seeing it was the most memorable one. But uh, taking my brother and I, we've been outdoors men since we were kids. I mean, we went in the service together. We spent a year and a half in the Navy together and got separated afterwards. But you know, we've done everything. You know, he started that venture business. We did the guiding business and everything else. So when I saw it and he wasn't there, it was like, oh my God, he's not going to believe this.
Right.
but but the next day, I said, come on, you got to come with me. I says, we got to go back out there. Just let me show you. He says, all right. So we went. That's when we got a hold of John and we went out there and we found that track. It was crazy, and we got screamed at. When we got screamed at, he knew right then and there that there was something there. So that really worked out good. And then actually on an expedition a couple of years after that is when he caught it on the FLIR. And there were 4 or 5 different people that saw it on the FLIR. Plus, you got a musky smell that about 6 or 7 people actually caught the odor. And then we passed around the FLIR. We passed it around enough so like 6 or 7 people could actually watch this thing walk back and forth across the log. And then they started videotaping it. And right after, I'd say, oh, maybe about 5-6 minutes had gone by, it vanished, and we saw this orb come up out of the trees and just shoot across. And we're all standing there watching it. There had to be, oh, I don't know, 13, 14 of us, and we just watched it take off.
You know, and that like I said, you know, going back to the orbs, that's one of the most interesting things that I've actually found in this research. Uh, Blake and I actually saw one night there at Altoona Lake. That this thing we had went in that night. There's an old cemetery there, Macedonia Cemetery, where we have had a lot of action at down there, and we had just pulled up to an old gate there in front of the cemetery. And this is a rural cemetery. Just to give you a little setting, it's like 3.5 miles off the main road, down an old dirt road before the cemetery is at, and there's a big iron gate right at the front part of the cemetery when you pull up there. And then just inside the gate on the left is a pavilion, and there's a little open area and a couple of signs at it used to be an old campground area in there years ago. This cemetery dates back to way before the Civil War. A lot of Civil War soldiers buried there in the cemetery, but we had pulled up that night to the gate and had just walked through the gate, and I caught movement. Uh, we had our big lights on, and I caught movement to my right. Well, I turned to see what was going on, and I caught just a glimpse of a dark shadow as it started into the woods, and I reached back and slapped Blake on the arm and pointed in the direction where I saw the movement, and just as he turned, there was an orb. Uh, this thing was as big as maybe a big butter bowl or something that you use to mix, cornmeal or whatever in. But it came up out of the tree line about 6, 8 foot off the ground and came right out toward us. And it was just a bright ball of light, and then it just dissipated.
Yep.
About maybe 15, 20 yards from us. It just dissipated. And it was the wildest thing I ever saw in my life.
I know what you mean. I ask myself so many times when I'm out there, I'm saying, where did that come from? It wasn't even there a minute ago, and it just pops up. So I don't know if there's a coalition. I don't know if there's, if there's something between the two, because I've seen an orbit almost every time. So there might be something there. I'm going to have to look into that more.
Well, like I said, we've done a lot of research on it. We've had it take place on 3 or 4 different occasions with us. Blake and part of the team were over on Blue Ridge one night a couple of years ago. I didn't actually get to go that night, and what was so funny about that night was that the military was up there. The Blue Ridge WMA is, and I'll kind of lay this out for you. They do a lot of training exercise. The military does in that area up there, and this particular weekend that Blake and them went over to do the investigation, he said they pulled up there at the old Hickory Flat Cemetery, and it's actually a shelter for there's a shelter there for the Appalachian Trail that people use to hike the trail. And
Yep.
Anyway, he said they pulled up down there and got their camp set up, and he said they kept hearing helicopters and stuff come across, and they heard shooting in the distance down in the woods and all. And he said they'd been there about 45 minutes or so, just long enough to get their camp set up, and there was a military Humvee pulled up in the parking area where they were at, and this captain got out and walked over and introduced himself and said he told them, said, guys, we're not trying to interfere with y'all's camp out. Said we're going to be in here about 45 minutes, and then our team will pull out, and we're going to be camped about 3 miles down the road from where you're at. There's a big grass area down there where they normally camp at. Well, there one of the guys that was with Blake walks over and asked the captain, says, sir, said, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen happen? Y'all doing these exercises over here. And they got to talking, and anyway, he said he had a picture of Bigfoot on his shirt, and said the guy finally told the captain, raised that little picture up and told him, says, well, you can kind of tell what we're doing over here. Well, Blake said this captain's demeanor completely changed, ended up, and I have pictures on the computer where Blake had sent them to me. They ended up with 8 Humvees full of military personnel camped within 10 yards of them, right on top of them. Wouldn't even let them get out of camp at night, so they could actually hear during the night. Blake said we'd lay in the tent, and we could actually hear these soldiers going through our stuff. And they'd put up trail cams and stuff that afternoon when they got there, and we even got a couple of pictures where these guys were down there moving the trail cams and moving
Really?
the positioning on the trail cams and stuff. So, it's just, man, it's a lot of weird stuff you have involved in this.
Oh yeah. And, you brought up trail cams. That's another, between that and the drones. That's another new marketing tool for investigators. I've had a lot of I've got 6 or 7 cameras that I put out every year. I put them out in different spots, where we've been investigating. I've had some pictures on there that were ambiguous. You couldn't tell what it was. You couldn't even surmise that it was a Bigfoot or anything else. But you knew it was an animal. But you never know. There's many, with everybody out there putting out trail cameras, for hunting and whatnot. Eventually, someone's gonna get a clear shot at it. Eventually, they say that they can feel the electrodes coming off of it, whether it's the battery or whatnot. I know some people now are putting them higher up in the trees and on an angle so they can get a better view coming down. They say that should alleviate some of the possibility of them sensing the electrodes coming off of it. Maybe I don't know, but I think eventually someone's going to catch one on a trail cam. There's too many trail cams out there for it not to get caught eventually. But then again, you're not going to get it in your backyard. I mean, some of these you might have to go deeper out. Then again, who knows? I mean, it's like a needle in a haystack. You put the camera out here and say, okay, I'm going to catch a Bigfoot with it. Well, what are the chances on that? I mean, I walked out there, I didn't see a moose, a deer, So you just, you put it out there and you hope that it comes by. You're investigating an area. You're hoping that you're putting it in the right place and maybe get lucky.
Well, they say that a lot of this towards Bigfoot, the correlation between trail cams and Bigfoot is the ultraviolet light that these things emit. But that's one thing that maybe the Sasquatch can actually see these things, and they help them avoid the trail cams. I know we had a guy send us a picture. I don't know, it was back last year of a full frontal shot of one that was supposedly taken on a trail cam, and we got to. Of course, anytime I get anything like that, we do our research as far as the internet's concerned, and this supposedly happened on a area known as Red Wine Cove, which is about 20 miles northwest of us, and we got on the internet. Blake and I both did, and a couple of our team members. It's fairly good on computers, a lot better than I am, of course. But
me too.
We actually found a pic that was taken, I think, like in 1996 in Whitehall, New York, and it was identical to the one that this guy had sent us. So basically, we got hoaxed.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
And that happens a lot too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in doing research in the field that we do it in, there is a lot of hoaxing that goes on.
Investigators put it. We put a lot of time and effort into it. It's not just taking 5 minutes and running out there. You might be going back and forth to that site for months. Buying cameras, recorders, whatever. A lot of time and effort goes into doing that. It's like a job.
Oh, most definitely. Man, there's a lot of times I spend more time in the woods, doing research than I spend on my job. So
exactly.
And you not only are you interfering with your livelihood, but you're interfering with your downtime with your family, the whole 9 yards. Going out and doing this. There's a lot of times that I've left here and been gone for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. Sometimes I have went on investigations down in Alabama that I've been gone for 2 weeks at a time. So you take away from your family time and everything else to do this. I've had people, I've had people tell me, "Hey man, we want to congratulate you on trying to make a living off of what off nothing." And I kind of look at them funny, kind of funny, and tell them, I said, "Well, look, dude," I said, I know where you're going with this, but everything that I do on my own dime. I don't take any money, any contributions from anyone. Everything that we do, our team coughs up the money for it. You know, any
Yep.
equipment we've got, the gas that the money on gas that we spend, and nowadays, believe me, it's got ridiculous on that aspect of it.
You're
But
not kidding.
all of that comes directly out of our own pockets. You know, we
Yes,
don't
it
ask
does.
anybody for anything.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all on your dime, and it's all out of your pocket. Is if you know if we did if we didn't give up that extra money, you wouldn't have as many investigators out there. There's a lot of information that a lot of investigators have put a lot of time and effort into that have gotten us closer to figuring it out, or getting closer to figuring out parts of it, of how Bigfoot works and whatnot. So, for everybody out there that is investigating, just keep doing what you're doing, because eventually one of us are going to come up with it. Whether it's on the East Coast, the West Coast, down south, in the middle, who knows? But one of us are going to come up with it. And like you said, times are tough now, especially with gas.
Oh
So
yeah, man, I'm telling you, I stopped. We left here Monday night. Went down to Altoona Lake. We got a report of a lady down there that lives down at what they call Red Top Mountain, hearing some
Yep.
screams down there, which is an area that's about probably 6-8 miles over to the right of where I was talking about the old cemetery that we've been doing investigations down there since 2011. So anyway, we stopped. I filled a truck up. I drive a little Ford Ranger, a 2007 model. I stopped and filled this thing up, and it was like $68 to fill it up. Just to go do this investigation. And like I say, man, that's money that comes out of my pocket. And, it ain't hurting nobody else.
Exactly.
It's my time, my dime. So.
I know it. I know it. You try to take people out. People want to know what. It's like an expedition. I have friends that wanted to go out. So my brother and I took them out. We said, "Come on, we'll go out." And we took them out to an area that we investigate all the time. It was winter time. It was cold, but I don't think it was that cold. It was cold enough to make some of the trees pop, but not all the trees pop. You ever hear a tree pop when it gets cold?
Oh yeah, many times.
Well, that's what we had going on. And the two, they were novice. Camping just wasn't their forte. Well, it went down to like 18 below zero that night, but the trees were popping, and they thought Bigfoot was out there for sure. They thought he was right, 20 yards out there, because you couldn't see. It was dark. It was snowing. But they swear that was Bigfoot, even though we tried to tell them it was the trees.
Right.
But now, because of that incident, they look forward to going out and investigating with us now. Before they didn't. They thought we were nuts, and now they want to go out with us. So sometimes it just takes that one little extra step, and you can change somebody's mind.
Well, I'm not. I don't do this to change anyone's mind. I do
Oh
this
yeah,
for
for me,
gratification for myself. To know
exactly.
that I know that these creatures are out there. I know they exist. I know in the area where we're at, we have the Cohutta Wilderness, which is up in Murray County. Uh, there's like 49,000 acres of the Cohutta Wilderness. It's government controlled. Hike-in only. No
Yeah.
vehicles whatsoever allowed in the wilderness up there. Uh, we do a good bit of investigations up there on it. We've got a lot of good subject material from that area. Screams, vocals. Even had a couple of owl calls up there at night that if in my opinion, and I'll put it that way, in my opinion, if
Yeah.
this had been else, they had to have weighed 600 pounds. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, that's how
Yeah.
the vocal came across to me as far as the deepness, the throatiness of the call.
Yeah.
You know, a 5 pound owl did not make these calls.
No.
You know, that's what I'm saying. And it's just wild. It's, you know, it's just, to me, every time I go out in the wilderness to investigate these creatures, it's a new adventure to me. It's something that gets blood to boiling. I love doing it, and hopefully, you know, the good Lord, I'm 64 years old, still out there doing it, at least on a weekly basis, and I hope the good Lord is gracious enough to let me do it till the day I die.
I hear you.
That's what I think about this. You know, that's the reason I do these podcasts once a week, is to inform people of these creatures, that these creatures do exist. Uh, you know, I've had people tell me, oh, you know, they think these things are just big teddy bears out there running around through the woods. Well, I'm here to tell you, some of the encounters I've had with these creatures, they're not teddy bears. They're far from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some of the stories that I have heard too. They're not teddy bears. Yeah, no, I hear you. But we do do it because we enjoy it. It's something that we enjoy, and you know, been doing it for quite some time. And it's like you were talking about the vibrato. My brother and I, when we were in that canoe up in Floodwood, up in the Adirondacks, when we were paddling, you could literally feel that bounce off your chest. It was like being at a concert. That's how loud it was. So,
well, man, I'll tell you an incident that happened to me and Blake. This was probably in 2013. We were down at Altoona Lake. We'd taken his dad's boat down that night. His dad was with us. We came out of the main body of the lake into this one particular cove where we had a lot of interaction with these things. We were sitting actually about 20 foot off the bank in this bass boat, and I had told Blake to do a yell. Blake got up and done a yell, and just as his yell stopped, this creature was on a ridge line about 30, 40 yards. This bank went right straight up. It was up on this ridge line, right in the edge of the woods. This thing screamed out, dude. I'm telling you what. It raised every hair on my head. Honest to God, this thing, dude, Blake still laughs about it and tells the story. He said, I don't know where Rick was going, but he was trying to get out of that boat that night. And I was up in the front of the boat, and when this thing screamed out, dude, I was climbing over the motor in the back of the boat. I had knocked his dad over to one side, and I'd climb from up on the motor, screaming at him to get us the hell out of there.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So
that's funny. That's funny. My brother and I were doing that. We were paddling the canoe when that happened. I was in the front. He was in the back. And he's trying to go into that little stream. And I'm paddling backwards for all I had. And he's trying to paddle forwards. And I said, oh, no, spin that sucker around. You go in there.
And then people don't realize, you know, you can be out in the woods and hear these things at a half mile, 3/4 of a mile from you. You can hear these screams and stuff, and it's really not that pervasive to you. But when you have one scream out at you at that close a distance as we did that night, and I mean, you said you can actually feel it vibrate in your chest, dude. That is one scary moment.
You got that right.
You're standing here and you know that you're no more than 30 yards from something that's 10 foot tall, weighs 1,000 pounds, that can snap you like a twig. I mean, hey brother, it's something that is exhilarating. It really is.
It sure is. There's no doubt about it. That's the exciting part. That's what keeps us going back. It really is, because you just want to find it now, because we've heard it, we've seen it. All we got to do is actually get close enough to get some DNA samples. No, because no one wants to take one dead. You just want to catch the DNA sample. That's all. That's a whole nother discussion. But you know, I don't want to see it dead. There's other ways of getting. There's other ways of getting it.
that's the main thing, I tell everybody is Northwest Georgia Cryptics is a non-kill group. We do not believe in killing one. Uh, we are armed when we go into the woods. We do take our service revolvers or whatever with us, but mainly that is for protection from. We have wild boars in this area. We have mountain lions. We have black bear. We have whatever could kill you out there in the woods. Not to mention a 9-foot giant running around out there. So we do
That's
go
right.
armed, but never have I on any investigation. Never have I drawn a weapon whatsoever.
No, neither have I. And believe me, the size of that thing and as fast as it moved, I probably wouldn't have gotten it out anyways. Because with 15 people there and it never got seen for a second time, that's moving. It could be on top of you in a drop of a hat.
Well, like I said, when I saw it in 1981, that thing, man, it was, like I said, the wood line was probably, I know, 25, 30 yards behind it. It was out on this sandbar that ran out into the main body of the creek.
Yep.
Like I said, crouched down, hands in the water. When this thing threw its head back and came to its feet, it turned, and it seemed like just a split second, it was in the woods and gone. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about as far as the speed and the agility that these creatures possess.
I get asked that question all the time. Well, how come there's never a picture? How come you can't get a clear picture? Well, when you're looking at something that your brain's trying to figure out what it is and it's gone like that, before you can't even think of grabbing your phone because you see it and it's gone. If you're lucky, you have a GoPro going or you got a car camera going and you might get lucky that way. But not many people are walking around with their phone on all the time, trying to catch a picture because you never know when it's going to happen. I think that's one of the reasons why you never get a clear shot at it. Or when you do, it's 200 yards away and it looks like it's an inch tall.
Most definitely. You were talking about the pictures there. I'm going to show this one. Let me bring this up here.
Yeah, that picture there, that was the most recent one.
Okay, then where was that taken at?
To be honest, I can't tell you. I don't know. I think my brother and I believe it was October Mountain. That's one of the areas that we've been investigating for quite some time now. We've caught it on the FLIR out there. We've had the musk smell that night, and it was drizzle raining. We had knocks, we had whistles, and we had the orb. I think that's where this was taken, but I can't find the exact spot, and that's my dilemma.
You're talking about the smell now. Blake and I encountered that thing. We've encountered it on numerous occasions, but my feeling on that is, if you're as close enough to those creatures, I mean, when you're in the woods and you encounter the smell, dude.
Yep.
My opinion, basically, you have to be what I would say on top of these creatures to be able to get that smell. And
yeah, we had just a slight wind that night, but we were, I don't know, just on the verge of like 90, 95 yards away, where the FLIR was just picking it up. And we're standing there, and when myself and two other, Dave McCullough and Chuck, walked away from the group, he says, "Can you smell that?" And when you just stood there and let the breeze come by you, you got a very faint smell of a musky smell, and it was coming from that general area. So it was pretty interesting. And then when one of them handed me the FLIR, and I'm looking through it, and I says, oh, I says, geez, that matches the musky smell. I says, hey, did anybody take a picture of this thing yet? And then all of a sudden, because you're not thinking of it, then they turned on the recorder, and that's when we watched it for, I don't know, for about 3 minutes, go back and forth. The whole thing was 6 minutes, but we watched, after we realized it, we recorded it for about 3, and then it just disappeared. Well, we went up a day later, I think it was 12 hours later. I think we went up. There was a partial print, but very ambiguous. Because it was high grass and kind of swampy. So the print, after it stepped in there, it got a chance to bounce back. So you really couldn't get a good print off of it. But it was right next to the log itself. And that's where we saw this thing through the FLIR. The gentleman that it's up at it's called it used to be an old Boy Scout camp back in the 70s. And they've had a lot of different things. We've been up there fishing. We were up there fishing, my brother and I. We took the canoe out purposely to see if we could get that happen again. And sure enough, we had 2 rocks thrown at us, big rocks. And you could tell it was a big rock by the way it hit the water, and you get that, it's like a sucking sound when the rock hits it. And it had to be from a good distance up the embankment, because it's kind of open. There's no trees, couple of bushes maybe. So up about 40, 50 yards up is where the tree line starts. So it had to come up from at least 50 to 60 yards up from the water itself. And this thing was pretty big. So we had that happen to us. And then we took a group out. The team Squatch took a group out. They wanted to see if they could get anything to happen. They walked around. I stayed on one side of the lake, and they started walking around the other side. And as they were walking around the other side, we got 2 knocks. And of course, they radioed me and asked me if I did anything. I said, no, I'm just sitting at the picnic table. All of a sudden, we could hear a tree get pushed over. I said, okay, that was pretty close. It was like 20, 30 yards away. I says, yeah, that one's pretty close. I says, how far around the lake are you guys? Because I was there by myself. So then they started coming back around, and the guy, he says, that wasn't you. And I says, I haven't moved from this spot. I said, this is where I've been. I said, that tree that came down was like, about 30 yards into the woods over there. So we went over and we started looking around, and sure enough, there was a tree down. Was it the same one? Couldn't tell you that, but it was pretty ironic to have that happen that night. You couldn't have planned it that way. So, and that was the first time that we had trees pushed over at that spot. We've had the rocks, we've had the whistles. We had a gentleman that was investigating it on his own. And that's one of the reasons why we found out what was going on up there, because he was investigating it. He found a rock and it had a bass on it. I guess the guy was fishing, and he heard some noise behind him, some grunting and growling, and the guy just took off. He left his fish on the rock. And Chuck, that was investigating, just happened to be coming up the dirt road, and whatever it was must have been right there eating that bass, because part of the bass was there, and it was freshly eaten. And he ran into the guy that was fishing there, and he was running out, and he says, I don't know what it is. He says, but it's pretty big. He says, I'm getting out of here. So put the 2 together and says it's a possibility. He had a Bigfoot right there, was watching him catch that fish, and he wanted it.
Oh,
so
he
scared him off. Scared him off.
It's wild what you run into on these things. I had a guy a few months ago down on John's Mountain. We were camped down there one night and doing an investigation, and this guy was camped right below us. He was in there that weekend turkey hunting, and he'd come up to camp. We got to talking, and he told me, he said, I've spent the last 70 years in the woods. I've never seen anything. I've never heard anything. And if there was any creature whatsoever out there in the woods, uh, I'm sure it would have showed itself to me by now. Well, I run into the same gentleman. Actually, he came into the store where I work at. I work for an auto parts store, and he came into the store a few months later, and he saw me, and he walked over, and he said, said, I've got to apologize to you. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, that night I run into y'all down there on John's Mountain. I said, yeah, what about it? He says, well, I thought y'all was all full of crap. He said, but he said, I was up in the edge of Murray County on the Cohutta WMA a few weeks ago, and he said I had something happen to me that I've never had happen. He said I went into the woods. I got to smelling this smell. It smelled like burnt sulfur and rotten eggs. And he said I didn't know what it was. Didn't know whether it was some kind of decaying animal or whatever. He said, so I walked down this trail off this little edge of this little ravine, and he said, it was right at dark. He said, I don't know what it was. He said, but there was something screamed out at me. And he said, through a rock, he said, probably about the size of a small basketball. He said, that thing whizzed that rock right in my head. He said, I've never had anything like that happen. He said, and I'm just here to tell you, he said, that taught me that there is things out here in these woods that are a lot bigger than we are. He said, because, he said, I sat and reasoned. He said, there's no damn way it could have been a bear. He said, a bear can't throw rocks. He said, I've been around them all my life. He said, whatever that thing was with that rock right beside my head. He said, if it wanted to kill me, it could have easily have took my head off. He said, he said, my whole outlook on this has completely changed.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you got to remember that here's a creature now. If he can use that ability to throw a rock with accuracy, he can use that for hunting. So he had no problem throwing a rock and taking you out. You know what I mean?
Oh, you got that right.
Absolutely.
Dude, I had something, I don't know what it was, I didn't see it, but on one investigation down the edge of Alabama that we went on, I had something through a link. It was if I had it to say, it kind of looked like a spear. Was what I kind of perceived that. But this thing threw this right beside my head, I'm gonna say within a foot of my head, and the limb actually stuck into a tree, and in behind where I was standing, and if this thing would have wanted to take me out, it could have hit me right between the eyes with that.
Absolutely. I don't think they have to exert a lot of energy or a lot of force if they're looking for food, because they're a big animal. So they're going to try to conserve as much energy as possible. And that's where their accuracy comes in. That's what I believe.
Most definitely. Well, a lot of people tell me, if these things actually exist, they're just dumb animals, dumb apes, whatever, out there running around. Well, there was a guy told me a few years ago about an incident that happened to him up in Tennessee. He had been going into this well-known camping area up there. Said he had to park and walk about a mile into where he'd been going in up there fishing, and this had happened like every weekend. He said that whole summer he'd been going up there. He said he'd get there and set his camp up, and about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, he'd go to bed. And he said as soon as he'd get in a tent and get in his sleeping bag, he said you could hear these small pebbles hitting his tent. Well, he said it's rocked on for quite a few weekends. Well, he said one Friday evening before he went up there, he decided he was going to go to Walmart. So he went to Walmart and he bought a bucket of tennis balls and took with him. And he said that night, sure enough, 10:30, 11 o'clock, here these pebbles being thrown in his tent. So he says he got out and he started throwing these tennis balls up through the woods. And he said you could actually hear this thing running around chasing these balls. All right.
Interesting.
he gets in a tent, goes to sleep. The next day he gets up, packs out. He says he goes back down to his car. There's 8 or 10 vehicles, same ones that was there that evening when he parked, still sitting there in the parking lot where they were at. He says across the hood of his vehicle was every tennis ball that he had thrown that night was lined up right at the base of his windshield across his car hood.
Oh, wow.
So
No
now
kidding.
you tell me how dumb these animals are.
Well, oh, they're not dumb. They're not dumb. They're an animal, and I give them the credit of an intelligent animal. But I don't go beyond that. I don't try to humanize them. I know some people try, but I just can't go that far yet. But they are a very smart creature.
You know, I'm not saying that as far as a human aspect,
Right.
I'm not saying these animals can, actually possess that. You know, it could have been off of scent,
Absolutely.
basically.
And
And you
see,
know that's kind of the
that's
way I took this. But
that's the
now for them,
investigating part.
that's it. But for them to know, out of all these vehicles,
Yeah.
that was his vehicle parked there, that they put these things on, you know,
Hmm.
I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah. No, it's like you said, it could be scent. Who knows? I mean, anything is possible. I would have never believed it years ago. I would have never believed that Bigfoot was out there because of all the camping that I've done, all the people I've taken into the woods, all the different groups, all the different places I've been, and to know that it's there, and try to tell somebody that it's there. It's like two different worlds. And now knowing that it's there, your outlook is entirely different on the woods, because now I can look at the woods instead of just listening to it being dark and not knowing what's going on. You pick up certain noises now that you probably heard years ago that you'd never put two and two together, and that just kind of changes everything now, because now you can hear things that normally shouldn't be making noises, or certain noises at nighttime. All is.
I used to coon hunt. Uh, Coon hunted for years and years with pack of hounds, and I've had a lot of strange things back then happen to me that I never really put two and two together until I really got to doing this and got to investigating these creatures. But I've had things that have paralleled me in the woods that you could actually hear uh, heavy bipedal footsteps at night. Never see a thing. Never see a
Yep.
thing. I've had the dogs actually in various areas where my dogs would not even hunt. They might go out 20, 30 yards and come back whimpering with their tails between their legs and go
Yep.
back and get in the dog box. And, there's a lot of times that I contribute that those things uh, could have been in those areas. And that's what the dogs were afraid of. I don't know.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I can't imagine a hunting dog being afraid of too much. They kind of go after and hunt for everything. And having a Bigfoot out there could change that in a heartbeat. I mean, that's a huge creature. And that dog just looks up there and sees that thing. It's like, no, I don't think so. Not today.
Not today. All right, Eric. We got an hour and 15 minutes into the show, man. I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts, sharing some of your stories with us. And I would love to extend invitation to you to come back and join us again.
Oh, absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank everybody that's tuned in tonight. Everybody that will watch this in the future. Eric, do you have a Facebook page or anything that?
I'm on the. I have a Facebook page. I do. You send it on. You send me a request. I'll accept you.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
accept you. I'm on the BFRO. I have a BFRO Facebook page. but I'm easy to find. But I tell you, it was nice coming on. I was glad to get out there and talk to you and let people know that it is there, and there's different ways of looking at things, the aspects of going out. You obviously, from where you're living, are investigating in a entirely different way than I am, which is nice, because now I get to hear two sides of a way to investigate something. So that's pretty cool. And you have some great stories, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. Everything I've told you tonight's the truth, buddy. We've had some wild stuff happen to us. You know, and I don't know what your investigation techniques are, but down here, you know, we've used basically everything that I could think of, as far as you know, there's areas that we use baits in. There's to try to draw these animals in. I found that they actually in a couple of areas that we use that canned sardines. You just crack the cans open, and
Oh,
you know that's a good lure for them. That'll draw them in. I found that apples, these things really love apples, but you know,
yeah.
we've put out bananas, and they really don't seem to cure for bananas. So you know, it's just trial and error with these things.
That's the whole thing. I mean, for what works one day might not work at some other time. So it's like you said, it's trial and error, and taking a lot of notes.
That's exactly it. All right, Eric, thank you very much for being on the show, bud. Really enjoyed it. And like I said, we will be hitting you back up, find out what's going on with you.
All righty, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, uh, thanks for everybody watching and tuning in tonight. For those that watch us in the future, be sure, if you like the content, be sure to go down and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Tell YouTube and Facebook that you enjoyed the content. Everybody, until next week, God bless. Stay safe. Thank you.